Welcome, everyone. We appreciate you joining us today for our Zoeller Shark Series grinder pump webinar. My name is Greg Teague. Let's go ahead and get started. What we're going to discuss today is the grinder offering and what grinders we offer at Zoeller, but we also want to talk a little bit about the different types of grinders that we offer and the grinders in general. You'll hear at Zoeller a lot, we refer to our grinders as the Sharks. So you'll see that throughout the presentation as well. What a grinder is meant to do, there's some popular misconceptions out there about grinder pumps. Grinder pumps are not meant to be a trash pump. They are not meant to cut up everything that goes, any kind of trash and things like that. What they are meant to cut up and do is grind up anything that can go down a residential toilet. So, and as most of us know, and as we'll talk a little bit throughout this, obviously that's a pretty wide variety of things. So it does get into some other things other than normal hygiene products and things like that. But that's what a grinder was originally designed to do, is just to cut up hygiene product, disposable things, toilet paper, and of course, solid waste. Most grinders are going to discharge at 1.25 inch discharge. The reason for that is obviously we are cutting the solids down to smaller diameters so they can pass through a smaller pipe size. Grinders were originally designed, and we're going to show you some variations on that, but originally grinders were meant to be used on pressure sewer systems or any kind of system where you're getting persistent clogging. Because of the way grinders are designed, you generally get a higher head pressure than your standard sewage ejector. At Zoeller, all of our grinders use what we call our patented scissor cutting action. What that is we're actually using a rotating cutter on top of a stationary cutter plate. It kind of gives you that action of, if you can imagine cutting through a piece of paper with the scissors, at that deepest point as that scissor cuts through there, you're using both of those actions to actually cut up your debris or your waste. So we feel like we get a much more efficient cut out of it, and also eliminates a lot of the old misnomers about grinders where they can get clogged or debris can get in there and cause problems. Where we're going to start today is with one of our newest offerings in the Zoeller line of grinders, which are our fractional grinder pumps. The 803, the 805, and the 807s have now probably been out about 5 years, I'm going to say. They actually came to be from one of our other products. The 803 being a 0.5 horsepower, the 805 being a 3/4 horsepower, and the 807 being a 1 horsepower unit. These cast iron construction, you can see the pumps on the left there. We make them in an automatic version so that it's kind of a plug and play type use. You can see the cutter star up there at the top, the cutter plate and the cutter. Again, those are a stainless steel cutter, and you'll see the cutter can rotate. These are 3450 RPM pumps, so there's a lot of torque there. And you'll see the cutter plate behind it that has the small holes in it. That's actually going to act similar to what a cheese grater would act like. So as you're cutting with the rotating cutter, then as debris gets pushed across that plate, that's where that scissoring action is going to get, and you're going to get an even deeper cut there. These pumps came out of a need that we saw probably, like I say, within the last 5 to 7 years, where more homes are going to a lower flow toilet. We're down to, in some cases, I think 1.3, 1.6 in some cases for a flush, compared to the old styles that were well over 3 gallons per flush. So you've got less water going down the toilet, but in some cases, as most of you guys know, we've got more things going down the toilet. You can walk through any grocery store now and find a whole variety of products that say that they're quote unquote flushable. Well, all flushable means in this market is that it'll fit through the trap on the toilet. Unlike toilet paper, a lot of these cleaning products and wipes, as you guys are familiar with, they will not break down like toilet paper does with water and time. So they have become a huge, huge problem for us in the plumbing industry. This pump was actually designed to go into where you might traditionally use a half horsepower or bigger or slightly bigger residential sewage ejector, but maybe that sewage ejector is starting to clog because of it's being more of a sludge coming through there than it was before because of the lack of water. This pump allows you to go in with a smaller grinder. They're available in 115 volt. To give you an idea, the 803, which is a half horsepower unit, has almost an identical curve to our 267 sewage ejector pump. They're slightly different, but not very much different. So you could use that pump in almost any application where you would use a sewage ejector. It's a 115 volt outlet. It only does 7.5 amps, so you don't have to change anything at your box. You don't have to change anything at the outlet level. Size-wise, these pumps are similar to a sewage ejector. So they'll go in that application where maybe you're having an issue with a sewage ejector, or maybe somebody just wants an upgrade to a grinder. This can go in there, easily be replaced, and more than handle a whole home. These are really great pumps. We've had a lot of luck out of these pumps. Again, as you can see, this cast iron design. We use a baked on epoxy coating on all of our cast iron that helps protect that iron over time against any of the sewage and anything else, especially if anybody's familiar with sewage gas. The gases in most sewage chambers can be very corrosive. So we help protect these pumps as much as possible. Even on the automatic version that has the attached float switch to it, we actually use a Viton boot on that. That Viton helps keep that boot from being damaged from any kind of corrosive chemicals or cleaning materials, anything like that. Here are the curves for those pumps. So as we talked about earlier, the 803, you see there on the left, the very bottom curve. Shutoff head on the 803 is about 35 feet, and it runs out to about 35 gallons a minute. The 805 and the 807, as you can see, go slightly higher. Now, one thing I'd like to point out with these, you'll even notice with the 805, the shutoff head on the 805 is 55 feet ahead. These pumps are generally meant to pump out into a gravity sewer. Most sewer systems, especially a low pressure sewer system, the head pressure at the main is going to be too much for one of these pumps. If that was the case, we'll show some other pumps that we would recommend or we would use in those applications. But generally speaking, these pumps are going to pump out to a gravity sewer system. One more thing I'd like to point out at this time is, and this question always comes up, is can I use a grinder pump to pump out to my lateral lines on a septic tank? We do not recommend using grinders in any kind of a septic application. The reason we don't recommend it is, first of all, as a grinder runs, if it's a pump that's in a pump chamber that's attached to the septic tank, it's going to agitate that water, and it's going to grind everything up into very small pieces. Those small pieces tend to become in the sewage itself instead of the solid settling on the bottom of the tank like you normally would want in a septic application. We don't want the solid suspended within the gray water, and then that gray water gets pumped out to your lateral lines, and those small pieces over time will cause your lateral lines to clog and to fail. So that's why we do not recommend using a grinder in any kind of a septic application. Another new product that some of you guys may have already be familiar with, our brand new 24x24 prepackaged system. And this directly goes along with the 803, 805, and 807 grinders. We offer this system with all three of those grinder options inside of it. This is a prepackaged breakdown of that new system. Again, it's a 24-inch in diameter by 24-inch height basin system. The system comes with an actual clear plastic construction cover on top of it. The nice thing about that construction cover, it's held on by a set screw. It can be either removed with the screw or you can just tear it away. What this does is this protects the system, the openings, anything on this basin from any kind of debris that can be present during install, whether it be in a basement where you actually have masonry work going on around the basin, or if you're backfilling with gravel, or if it's outside and you have just dirt and debris. You don't want that stuff to get down into this basin and get into our pump. So the construction cover helps during that process. One of the nicest features of these basins are, you see the little green opening right there. That is a inspection port that is on this lid. The inspection port does not require, it's just a twist on and is easily removed. You don't have to bolt it down, anything like that. And what that does is that gives you access to not only the pump, but you'll also see the removable float tree that's in there as well. That float tree is actually spring loaded. So without having to get your hands all the way down into the sewage, you can actually remove that float tree very easily through the inspection port. Depending on the type of floats that you use to operate your pump, or if there's an alarm float or anything like that that needs to be adjusted, you can get access to that very easily. Kind of hard to see, but you can, if you look, this basin comes pre-packaged. So we do have an opening for a vent on one side that's a 2-inch NPT opening, and we have a 2-inch NPT threaded opening for the discharge as well. So it's pretty much, again, set and ready to go. The basin itself comes with a 360-degree top and bottom anti-flotation device. You'll see there the anti-flotation ring, the indentation there allows you that when you backfill around the basin, again, it won't float up out of the ground. The top one actually can be used as a handle, helps you maneuver the basin into place, things of that nature. The basin comes with a molded inlet already installed, as you'll see there. But you'll also see on the right side there, you'll see a flat surface. That flat portion is present on the other 3 sides of that basin that allow you, if you need to, add an additional inlet. All you would have to use is a hole saw to get to it. One of the nice features, and you really can't see it very well right here, but right in the middle of that lid is a stainless steel tag that's affixed to the lid. That tag not only will tell you the model number of the package system that we sell, but it also tells you the model number of the pump and the electrical properties of the pump and the horsepower. One of the things we get a lot, I'm sure you guys do as well, in the field is we get a phone call from a homeowner and they say, hey, my pump's not working. And we try to get some information. Well, what kind of pump is it? I don't know. It's down in this pit and it's covered in sewage. Obviously, they don't want to go down in there and look any more than you guys want to go down in there and look. So now that information is available on the tag. We actually also leave a spot on that tag for contractors to actually put their name and number as well. So if they want to receive a call back in case of a problem, there's an area on that tag where the contractor can affix their name and information as well. Here's a nice cutaway of the basin. One of the other things you'll see here, you'll see the inspection port on top. You can get a good view, in this case, of the pump. This is a pump that's using a piggyback float switch and has an alarm. We make this system with an alarm and without an alarm, so you don't have to have one. If there's a budgetary reason you don't want a high water alarm, you don't have to use one. But in this case, you'll see there's 2 floats, one for the pump, one for the alarm. You'll notice on the bottom there, one of the other features of this basin is the torque stops that are in the bottom. Those little indentations are where the feet of the pump set. What those are meant to do is, obviously on a grinder, because it's a 3450, and actually any pump that has a spinning impeller on it, when those impellers spin, the pump naturally wants to kind of spin with it. Over time, we've actually seen systems where the pump can actually unscrew itself from the discharge pipe. With those torque stops, the pump's not going to move around as much. It's going to be much more stable and much easier to use. We do, I will point out, I know we're talking about grinders, but we do also make this system. This is our 915 system, which is the designation for our grinder package. But we do also make this package in what we call our 912 systems, which are for sewage ejectors as well. Here's a breakdown of those systems. Shows you just a couple. Now, those are not all the all the availability and the configurations. We do have a few others. And then at the bottom, you'll see the numbers for the 915 systems. And again, it shows you the different horsepower ratings, the voltages, 115 volt, the amps, the discharge, and with or without an alarm. Now we want to talk a little bit about the more traditional, what we call pressure sewer systems, which is where grinders first got their start. To do that, I'm going to give you a real brief overview of where grinders came from. Back in the late 50s, early 60s, really, as people, especially soldiers, were coming back from the Korean War, we had that's when the baby boom was. We started having people wanting to move out of the urban downtown area. They wanted to go to these new cookie cutter places called the suburbs. So people started moving out of the city and getting farther away from the city. The problem we had as they moved away from the city was we had to develop a way to get your sewage from the suburbs, which weren't in the city anymore, to a treatment center or a treatment facility for your sewage. Traditionally, rural areas would use septic systems. The problem with the suburbs were some of these lots were not big enough to have a septic system. Some of these lots were built on soil and in areas that weren't conclusive to using a septic system. So something else had to be done. The old style of moving your sewage was to use gravity. Depending on how many houses or how many businesses or however many whatever were feeding into that sewer main, you had to have a very large pipe to handle all the solids and everything else that was going down there. And that pipe had to be graded at a certain degree so that it would flow downhill. A lot of you folks are familiar with the term lift station. That's where lift stations came from. Sewage would flow downhill for an extended period of time. It would get to a point where it was so deep, they would have a pump system that would pump it basically straight back up, and then it would gravity again, kind of in a stair step type motion. The problem with that is that meant multiple pump systems and things of that nature, very hard to maintain. So somebody had to come up with something new. A group of engineers from General Electric actually came up with the original idea for a grinder pump. They based it off of the concept of a garbage disposal, actually. But what they found, again, as we talked about in one of the first slides, was this new pump, because yes, it would grind things up into small pieces, but because you were kind of forcing those small pieces through smaller pipe, your head pressures shot well up. Thus, because the head pressures went to an extreme, much higher than what they were used to, one of the side effects was you actually started pressurizing your sewer pipes. Thus, the invention, whether meant to be or not meant to be, of the pressure sewer system. As you can see here, this is just a cutaway of a typical neighborhood. There's 4 homes. Each home there would have a small grinder pump station in it. This is still used today. Those grinders will get everything feeding from that particular home, pump it out to the main. One thing you were able to do now, because everything's smaller pieces and everything's pressurized, is my main doesn't have to be as large anymore. It can be a much smaller pipe diameter. And secondly, it doesn't have to be graded, because now it's not gravity, right? We're pressurizing it. So because of that, now, depending on what area of the country you live in, I use the example of Kentucky, which is where we're located and I'm calling from. In Kentucky, our freeze line is about 18 inches. So I can go in with a single diameter pipe or a smaller pipe. I can just simply trench out when I'm doing a neighborhood at 18 to 24 inches, let's say, and lay that pipe instead of having to grade it all the way down and things like that. So it made it much more economical to build neighborhoods, made it much easier to be able to dispose of the waste. All right, let's talk about some pumps that we use on some of these systems like this. As I said, you had a group of engineers out there that that came up with this concept of the original grinder. Their original grinder is actually what we refer to as a progressing cavity grinder. The progressing cavity grinder pump is a little different than a standard centrifugal pump. A centrifugal pump is going to have an impeller that spins and moves the water, just like a simple pump. Progressing cavity pump is going to be a little bit different in that inside that lower cavity there where the water goes through, instead of a traditional impeller, you're actually going to have what they call a stainless steel stator, which is kind of a corkscrew shaped piece of metal that is inside a rubber boot. So I'm sorry, the stator is the rubber boot. I apologize. The stainless steel is the rotor inside the stator, which is the rubber boot. On this pump, you still have a cutter and cutter plate on the bottom. So as water comes through, it's going to cut everything up into small pieces. But then that rotating corkscrew shaped rotor inside that is going to force that water up through that boot and out the discharge. In doing that, you generate extremely high head pressures. If you look here, our 810 and 815 model pump generate head pressures up to 240 feet for the 815. These pumps were designed specifically to go in applications where they're using a similar type pump. What you can have in a system is, if you can imagine a pressure sewer system where the pressure at the road is somewhere around 100 psi or 80 to 100 psi. If my pump will not generate that type of head pressure going into the main, then the pressure that's already in that main basically acts as a shut valve. So we've actually seen pumps try to pump into a high pressure main, and the pressure in the main so much that my pump can't pump into it, and the pump just runs. Okay, so it'll continue to run because it's trying to pump the water. The water levels in the system's not going down, so the float's not going down to turn the pump off. So that pump just runs until it actually burns itself out. That's why we designed and built our own version of our progressive cavity grinder pump to go into these extremely high head pressure systems. Generally speaking, because these pumps generate such high head, they have very low flow rates. So we generally don't use these pumps in commercial applications. You can, but you have to be very picky with what they are because of the low flow rates. Generally, we recommend these pumps for just residential applications. One of the nice features you'll see on our version of the progressive cavity versus other versions that are on the market is ours is cast iron. One of the things you'll start to see on our grinders as we get a little larger here, you'll see those little fins that are on the side of the pump. Yes, those fins look really cool, but that's not what they're there for. What we do is our motor that's inside that motor housing right there, it's an oil-filled motor, so there's a dielectric oil that surrounds that motor inside there. That motor, as it spins, especially with a grinder, is going to generate heat, which are amps actually. So during the grinding phase of pumping, you'll see the amps slightly rise, and that's actually the pump generating a little more heat. So what we're doing is we're using that dielectric oil to actually bring the heat away from the motor to help protect it. And then we're actually using the cast iron pump and those fins to actually take that heat and transmit it out to the media around it. So if it's sewage in this case, we're going to actually use that to help cool the pump down. Those fins actually offer additional surface area, so we can actually help keep our pump a little cooler than normal. One of the other features we use on ours, if you'll see on the lower right-hand side of the pump there, you'll see a little brass piece right below the discharge. That is a air relief valve, a pressure relief valve. Again, these pumps generate extremely high pressures, so we actually put a pressure relief valve on the pump to help keep it from damaging itself because of those high pressures. And as you can see here, this pump is on we have a stand for it, so it does stand itself. But with all of our grinders, one thing I wanted to point out is we do have a complete variety of accessories that are available for all the grinders. So whether that be a rail system or however you're wanting to install these, we do offer a complete variety of accessories and things that go with these pumps as well. The next pump in our system is actually 3 pumps in one, is our 820, 819, and 818 model pumps. These are a 1, 1.5, and 2 horsepower pump. With the 820 probably being the most popular of the group that we have. We've had that pump. That pump's been around with us now since as long as I've been with Zoeller, like I said, which is 17 years now. We did basically all 3 use the same housing. We just are able to derate the motors a little bit to get to the lower horsepowers for some different things. One of the nice features with these pumps are generally rated for 230 volt single phase. but the 818 model is available in the 1 horsepower unit and a 115 volt version. So if you don't have 230 volt available, we do have a 115 volt available in the 818. This pump is available in different configurations. You'll notice it does still have the 1.25 inch discharge. Again, most grinder pumps are going to use an 1.25 inch discharge. I will say this, and I didn't say this earlier, and I apologize. On the fractional horsepower grinders, the 803, 805, and 807, they are made at 1.25 inch, but because they're replacing, generally going into applications where we're replacing 2-inch sewage ejectors, we actually include a 1.25 inch to 2-inch adapter with the pump to make it very easy for install. This pump you'll see here is also available. You'll notice it is available with an integral float switch. That would be what we refer to as our WD model. You can use this with a float with the integral switch. You can also use this with the control panel as well. You notice the fins on there for our cool run design to help add life to the pump, all cast iron construction. One thing I will point out is the cutters, and on all of our cutters, they are a Rockwell hardened stainless steel cutter and plate. They are a stamped steel cutter. So to my knowledge, we don't require, there's no reason to ever have to sharpen or anything like that with the cutters. Again, I've been doing this a long time. I'm not going to say I've never seen it, but I can probably count the number of cutters I've seen come back damaged on one hand. And that's over 17 years, and that's a lot of grinders. They just don't, they're very durable, and we're not going to have to replace them. I know there are some manufacturers out there that give you time limits on every 36 months or whatever, 48 months, you need to change your cutter out. We don't require anything like that. Obviously, nobody's going to go down in this pit that's filled with sewage and change out a cutter anyways, unless for some reason the pump's not working. So with all the pumps that we've talked about so far, we do offer a 3-year warranty with these pumps. That 3-year warranty is from the date of purchase at your wholesaler. So if you're buying this through your local plumbing wholesaler, that 3-year warranty, as long as you can show proof of that date, is from the date that you buy it. As you can see on the top of the 820 here, we do have a stainless steel tag that has the manufacturer's date. If for some reason you don't have anything that shows where you bought it or when you bought it, then what we would do is generally we refer back to the manufacturer's date that's on that pump. With all of our pumps, you'll see here again, you have a stainless steel handle to help you pick the pump up and move it. Those handles can be used. You can affix, whether it be some kind of a lifting cable. We do see rope used on occasion, but rope, I generally don't. I mean, this pump's because of the cast iron, it's a very heavy, durable pump. I don't know if rope's the best option for lowering it in there, but I have seen that. I see chains affixed to it that work real well as easily and help you move the pump in and out. You'll notice this one is also on legs. So very durable, very good pump to have. This is just a breakdown of the curves of those two pumps. So you'll notice with the progressing cavity pumps on the left, again, very low flow, but extremely high head pressures. You'll see with the 815, we're actually getting up again around 240 feet ahead. The 820, again, is more of a traditional centrifugal type grinder pump and a 2 horsepower unit. You'll see that pump, I think actual shut off on that is around 107 feet ahead. You'll see that flows out to about 47 gallons a minute. So it actually flows out real well there. And you'll see the differences on the other two, the 818 and 819 as well. One of the things with the progressing cavity, again, going back to those, we spoke earlier, the gentleman that designed the original grinder, and they started a company, and in doing so, they have a very, I don't want to call it odd, but they have a different design for their pump tanks that they use. They were, it was actually very smart of them to make their pump tanks very hard to adapt to, so that you almost had to use, for years and years, you had to use their pumps to replace their pumps. Well, we came out with our 932 replacement assembly. We've had these out now for a while. They're very nice. First of all, we feel like you're getting a little bit nicer pump with our product. Again, cast iron design. With our cast iron, it's a little more durable. We don't like using plastics in a grinder design. It just doesn't seem like that would be a very good for a pump that generates that type of heat. and is in usually the worst environments. So as you can see there, the replacement unit theirs is actually affixed to the lid that is in their basin. It's suspended from that lid. They have a J hook, that J design discharge that's on top of the basin there. You'll see that as well, and all the electrical connections are generally made there as also. When we designed our 932 system, we designed it to drop directly down in there, so we put the same type of J discharge pipe on there. It'll go right in their systems. It'll match right up with their discharge. We even went as far as with the EQDs that you'll see there, which are the plugs, the little pin plugs. You can order ours. They make two different ones. They make an oval or a round one, and they make a rectangle one. We actually make the same type of EQD plug so that you can actually plug our system directly into their existing control panel. You don't have to change anything. You won't have to pull out the control panel, anything like that. You're getting a little bit nicer, more durable pump to go in those systems, and you're able to adapt right up without having to pull everything out and change it. You don't have to pull out the basin and change it. Ours will drop right into their units as well. The next pumps we want to talk about are probably my favorite. The 840 grinder pump, in my opinion, again, I'm a little biased. Obviously, I work here, but I think the 840 grinder pump is the best grinder pump on the market. I don't think there's anything out there that's even close. What makes it better than everything else, the 840 is the only automatic reversing grinder pump out there. Now, what does that mean? Well, just what it says. Every cycle that grinder pump comes on, it's going to go the opposite direction than it did the time before. So the old knock on the grinder pump was that if you got stringy materials or anything like that down in a grinder, it could wrap around that cutter. And especially if they're using there's some different types of cutters out there where if you got debris in there, it could cause that cutter to jam. The 840, because it reverses, if anything was to get wrapped around that cutter, the next cycle it goes through and goes the opposite direction, it's actually going to unwind itself. The 840 also, we talked a little bit about some of our competition out there that require you to change out a cutter or something like that. Not, again, that I've ever had to change a cutter, but what I've always told people is, because now I'm cutting on both sides of that cutter instead of just one, because I'm using both directions, I've just doubled the life of your cutter. So we're getting into another pump. This pump is great for any kind of commercial application. We will see the occasional residence where somebody just wants the best of the best and they put something like this in their house. But for the most part, you're going to see this commercial applications, schools, nursing facilities, multifamily homes, or apartment complexes, anything like that, any kind of commercial application where you're going to get stuff like that. You can imagine apartments and things like that, what goes down the toilet. You can really imagine with nursing facilities and schools, jails, anything really. It's endless, really. This thing cuts them up and spits them out. I've said on multiple occasions that I would put this 2 horsepower grinder pump against anybody else's on the market, and I don't even think it's close competition. These pumps are just unbelievably durable. We don't have problems with them. It's just, again, I would say is the best grinder on the market, hands down. You'll notice there, so the heads on the 840 go up to about 104 feet ahead and flows out about 45. So pretty similar to what the 820 was doing as far as the performance, but you're getting more out of it because of the reversing feature. What we've also got available is our 841. So the 841 pump is a little bit different. The only difference between it and 840 is it's a single directional. So if you can imagine the 840, we had to make an impeller that would spin forwards and backwards and had the same design. We don't have that on the 841. We can use a traditional, what we call a vortex style impeller that's ready for single directional. Because it's single directional, it actually does have a little bit additional performance on it. You'll see there, the heads go up to about 125 feet and it flows out about 61 gallons a minute. Honestly, we sell probably 9-to-1 the 840s over the 841s. It may be even less than that for the 841s. Really, because most people will want the reversing feature. It's that good of a feature. And again, from our standpoint, nobody else can do it. It's controlled within the control panel. So the control panel is what makes the pump reverse. But still, for a commercial application, you're not going to beat an 840. But if you did need some more performance, we can go to the 841 if we have to. You'll still notice it's still using an 1.25" discharge. You'll notice the fins on the design. Again, very rugged, very durable. These are our cutters. Just wanted to show you these up close. The one on the right is the cutter we use on the majority of our single directional pumps. You'll notice the holes, and the cutter is designed to go in a single direction. The one on the left is the cutter for the 840 grinder. So you'll notice even on that, so first of all, the star-shaped cutter would be the same going forward and backwards. But you'll also notice even the holes and the openings on the cutter plate are directional. So they're made, so you're getting the same performance when it turns clockwise, or if it turns counterclockwise, you're still getting the exact same performance. Just like we talked about with the fractional grinders, the 803, 805, and 807, we do use a variety of QLS system. Our QLS system is a package system that's designed to go with our larger grinders. QLS system is something that came about a while back now. We've probably had it out for a while. What this gives us the ability to do was to put in our representatives' hands the ability to quote some of these packages. We wanted to standardize certain package systems so that not only could we quote them to the customer quicker, but we could also build them in a quicker manner. All of our reps have a computer software available to them that allows them to build and design systems around a variety of different shapes and sizes of basins, so that they can do that and generate a price very quickly. Now, the QLS systems are a complete lift station, so they usually come with, as you can see here, there's a couple of examples of basin systems, but it comes with a fiberglass basin. We go as diameter-wise, we go everywhere from 24-inch up to 48-inch in diameter, and we can go as deep as 120 inches deep. What this allows us to do, we do simplex and duplex. You'll see these systems have a rail system already installed. If you're not familiar, the rail systems are there to help you remove the pump. You'll see the pump there is on the rail system, has a cable attached. It allows you to remove that pump without actually having to go down in the sewage. The systems come with all the valves. It has a check valve and a ball valve installed. We use Schedule 80 PVC. About the only thing we don't install in the basin is an inlet. The reason we don't install the inlet, now we include an inlet with it when it comes, but we don't install it because regardless of how many times we've been told the inlet is 3 feet below grade or it's 4 feet below grade, you get out to the job site and it's 4 foot 2 inches below grade and we're off. This way, the inlet, they install it's simple hole saw and they're ready to go. You can kind of see on the simplex on the top right there, you can kind of see there's a removable float tree that's installed as well. Floats come preset from the factory, but if for some reason, again, similar to with the other basin, if you have to remove them, it's just a simple piece of PVC. It pops out of its holder. You can pull that up and readjust those floats very simply. Some of the other features on here, again, now these are designed to go with all the grinders we've just talked about, from the progressing cavity up to the 840s and 841s. But we do offer this QLS system with a variety of pumps as well. We do include what we call our commercial duty sewage pumps, which are our 280s and 290s, and our commercial duty effluent pumps, which are like our 160 series pumps. So you can get a variety of different pump systems on here as well. We also offer it in a couple different configurations for your choices of cover. So basically, you can build this to your specification. We can use whether it be a fiberglass cover, a steel hatch cover, or an aluminum hatch cover can be used on this. You pick the pump, and then as they design the system, one of the nice things with the program that the reps have available is it will select the control panel for you and the floats to go with it. So there's no iffiness on the control panel. The computer does that for you. So we know we have the right controls for the right pumps. So there's no mistake to be made there as well. The other thing it does, which is very nice, I think, is as they put it together, the program actually will generate a line drawing of the system. That line drawing can be used in any kind of engineering submittals, anything of that nature. It can also be used because we're going to require it on systems of this size. We're generally going to require somebody to do some signed submittals for us before we start to build it. So it can also be printed out and used as a submittal drawing as well. I want to point out too at this time too that the QLS series again has its limitations. We're kind of compacting and keeping the most standard sizes and stuff. But we also have what we call our basin builder, our custom basin system, where we can build package systems to any design. We have the ability to do basins with valve boxes. We can do extremely large basins. I think our actual capabilities on basins are somewhere around, I want to say 9 feet in diameter, and they can go as deep as 35 feet. Now, that is not part of the QLS series, but I just wanted to make sure to note to you all that if you do have a system that requires something special, don't hesitate to ask, because we've probably been asked before and we can probably build it to your specifications. Again, this just shows what I told you earlier. Again, we can start with the simplex systems at 24-inch diameter. We go all the way up to the duplex systems, so 48 inches diameter, and depths from 48 inches or 4 feet all the way down to 120 inches or 10 feet. And there's the different covered options as well. Finally, I want to talk about one of the other options we have for grinder pumps that some people don't think of. We offer what we call our Quick John. Some of you are familiar with our Quick John Ultima that we've had out for a while, or one of our Quick John offerings that we've had out for a while. The Quick John is a behind the toilet up flush system, in this case that uses a small grinder pump to chop up whatever you have. So the idea is, where I'm at in Kentucky, for instance, you have a lot of basements, or if you want to put a bathroom in an area, but you do not want to have to break concrete, this small tank will fit behind a rear flush toilet. You'll see here, it's not a big tank. You can see it has an inlet for the toilet, and then it has an inlet. You can see one of them there on the right, where it has an inlet that can be for a sink or a shower on the other side. So it will hold a whole bathroom group, and it has a true grinder. It has basically a version of the 803 grinder kind of in there. The motor and the cutter are inside there. So as your sewage comes from your toilet, your water comes from your sink and your tub, you have an actual true grinder, and you can pump it over to your existing sewer system or your existing part of your house without having to break up any kind of concrete or anything like that. This system will fit, like I say, right behind a toilet, or we do have an extension so it can be put behind a wall if you want to put it behind your drywall. This is a brand new system. Anybody that's familiar with our older system, we just redesigned this tank for the Premier. What we've done is that grinder is in there. It's easy to access now. It's actually on a small system where it can be removed pretty simply. It's a very nice system. Let me show you this side, this next one. This is kind of a clearer picture, the clear cutaway of the grinder pump there. So you'll see the motor of the grinder. You'll see the switch assembly that turns the grinder off and on is on the right-hand side there. It's completely encased, so it cannot be debris, toilet paper, anything like that that goes down there is not going to affect the float switch on that system. One of the nice features that I like about this tank, if you notice, it's got the sloped bottom portion. That way it's kind of pushing all the sewage and everything towards that cutter on that grinder. So it's going to continue to cut and grind. The switch can be easily, you'll notice there, it actually has a thing that can be removed. So it can be popped off and removed fairly easily. You'll see, you can kind of see the inlets on both sides there coming in from the sink and from the tub or a shower, whichever you have. You'll notice it discharges up the top, and it also has a vent opening up at the top. This pump basically sits on almost, I don't want to call it a rail system, but the idea, so it can be easily accessed through the lid and taken out. You'll see some pictures on the left there of it actually behind the toilet and the cutter as well. Great new design on the tank itself. If it is behind a toilet where you can see it, it's a much smoother, sleeker design on the tank. Even with the appliance, we even went as far, we changed the plug on there where it's more of an appliance type flat plug. So again, we're looking for aesthetics on this, but it can very easily be placed behind the wall as well. And you're still getting that great grinder that we offer. So it's a little more durable. You're going to be able to cut up whatever goes in there. So again, if you want to add a bathroom to a basement or another area where you don't have existing plumbing, you don't want to jackhammer up the house, this gives you a great option to do that. Well, that's going to conclude our webinar for today. Just want to thank you guys again and hope you have a nice rest of your day.